Welcome to my American History Notes, where I discuss the conclusions I've drawn from studying American history. Conclusions you don't have to agree with or anything like that. Just want you to be conversant in American history. You should investigate the topics, study them, and have your own conclusions, and that would be great. That's my that's my goal. Get people interested in actually studying it, not just reading it. Some political ideologue spit out. So we're going to start about Teddy Roosevelt's administration today. Um, and Theodore Roosevelt then became the 26th president of the United States, serving from 1901 to 1909. He was informed of McKinley's impending death while descending a mountain he had been climbing. By the time he reached a railroad, he was now president. This was the kind of person he was, an outdoorsman, an active and vigorous man who loved, among other things, hunting and sports. His detractors were concerned that he would be a reformer and intrusive in his policy toward business. He did form a new cabinet post he called the Secretary of Commerce and Industries. He set aside land for national parks and felt an important calling to save our natural resources from destruction. Also, he invited the great black educator Booker T. Washington to the White House, who will be a subject of some future discussions. He attacked the giant railroad trust held by J.P. Morgan successfully. He ended a mine worker strike and got the miners a 10% wage increase after threatening a federal takeover of the mines if the owners didn't compromise. Roosevelt signed the Spooner Act, authorizing the government to negotiate for land to build the Panama Canal. He then promoted and supported a revolt in Panama against Colombia, the nation which owned the area, thereby creating the country of Panama. He later admitted in his autobiography that he took Panama without even consulting his cabinet. He considered the building of the Panama Canal his greatest accomplishment. Now, all of these things that you can see how American leaders felt that Latin America was someplace they could do whatever they wanted to. They just felt free reign because we were powerful. And the Monroe Doctrine basically drew a line and said to Europe, stay out. So it didn't keep us from exploiting the people down there. Whether it turned out good or not, that's what happened. Now, all of these things certainly appear to be good. However, at least since the Civil War, the federal government increasingly is becoming involved in matters which the founders never saw as its responsibility. And Americans were increasingly viewing the government as the answer to all problems and the final religious authority, at least in all moral issues. We as Americans came to look at things as morally okay that were legal, and that lawfulness slowly became the determinant for whether something was moral to do or not. Environmentalism, the fair treatment of workers, and even what constituted fair wages were becoming the purview of government, as well as the issues of personal morality. Winning the election of 1904, Roosevelt became even bolder. Before Congress, he announced an expansion of the Monroe Doctrine called the Roosevelt Corollary, saying that in the Western Hemisphere, the United States had the right to act as an international police power. He then seized the Dominican Republic's customs offices in order to force that country to pay its international debts on time. This involved sending armed personnel to that country. This lasted for 2 years until he was satisfied that things were back on track. Roosevelt acted as a mediator in the Russo-Japanese War, bringing both belligerents to the negotiating table at Portsmouth, New Hampshire in 1905, an effort which won him the Nobel Peace Prize in the following year. Japan wasn't too happy about it because the president had pressured them not to demand a large indemnity from Russia, and then San Francisco banned Japanese children from public schools. But after Roosevelt had that decision reversed, Japan was friendly again. Making good on an earlier threat, he had the Interstate Commerce Commission's powers increased by the Hepburn Act, which gave the federal government power over all public transportation in 1906. He then established the Department of Commerce and Labor through an act of 1903, and inspired by muckraking journalists Lincoln Steffens, Ida Tarbell, and Upton Sinclair, he had the federal government take charge over the food industry by the Pure Food Act. A financial panic hit Wall Street while Roosevelt was away on a bear hunt in October 1907. The teddy bear was a result of Roosevelt's mercy to a bear back in 1902, and a cartoonist, Clifford Berryman, immortalizing the act of kindness, and then a New York shop owner selling Teddy's bears. A depression followed after stock prices tumbled uh, when the financial panic hit in 1907. And Roosevelt denounced gambling in the stock market. And in spite of his own interventionist policies, he also denounced the use of injunction to stop strikes. In his last 2 years, he was unsuccessful in getting legislation passed, being a lame duck president. He had achieved the complete remodeling of the White House to accommodate his large family, the first in 100 years. He also managed to get William Howard Taft nominated as his successor in the Republican Party for the presidency, thinking that Taft would carry on his programs. This was not to be so, and Roosevelt ran against him in the next election under the Progressive Party, also known as Bull Moose banner. He was shot in the lung while giving a speech, but insisted on finishing the speech because he, quote, had something to say before being rushed to a hospital. Later, he would be seriously injured and come down with tropical fever while on a trip to explore the Brazilian waterway, the River of Doubt, which was eventually named after him, but fully recovered, running again for president in 1916. He died unexpectedly in 1919 from an arterial blood clot. Hindsight is 2020, they say, referring to the fact that it's easier to see things clearly once you've gone through them than it is to see the future. Roosevelt, like many Wall Street bankers and the country's luminaries, were taken in by the Bolsheviks and the need for reform in Tsarist Russia. Cartoons in the press even lampooned the former president for greeting with Wall Street bankers Karl Marx. We'll discuss Wall Street's love affair with both communism and fascism in a future session. But next, we're going to talk about William Howard Taft for a little bit. And I thank you for listening to me. I hope you'll study American history.